Episode 1 of Widow's Bay opens at sea where a man sailing alone at night vents over the radio about his divorce. He's speaking to his friend Lonnie at port control, but the mood shifts when Lonnie notices something moving towards him. The radio fills with static, the birds scatter, and the man turns to face the darkness, but there's nothing there. Now back in town, a group of teenagers are out smoking in a car when the radio cuts out, the lights go down, and a quake hits Widow's Bay. It's the first one to hit in 20 years, and while the local news insists no one was hurt, Mayor Tom quickly has more than enough problems on his hands. The power is out, the port is covered in fog, and Shep Clark has gone missing. Tom's bigger concern though is appearances. A New York Times journalist named Arthur has finally arrived after years of effort, and Tom is desperate for a glowing feature that could bring tourists and money into the struggling town. Unfortunately for him, Arthur's first stop happens to be the Historical Society, where Jerry gleefully fills him in on the island's grim history of cannibalism, witch hunts, and other local horrors. Tom tries to steer Arthur away from the darker legends, but the town's superstitions are impossible to ignore. Wick, one of the locals, warns Tom that the quake, the fog, and Shep's disappearance are signs that the island is finally waking up. Tom dismisses him, but Wick insists the fog has brought disaster before. According to him, the first sign is white eyes, followed by confusion, loss of the senses, and then death. Tom refuses to believe any of this, partly because he thinks Wick is bitter, and partly because admitting there may be something wrong would destroy the image he's trying to sell of the town. He even lies to the town and claims Shep has been found, despite the sheriff making it clear that things are not that simple. And that changes when Shep suddenly stumbles into the bar and collapses. He's taken to the hospital, where the doctors assume he suffered a bad fall, but Tom notices something strange in his medical chart. Shep had no alcohol in his system. Moments later, Shep wakes up, mumbles something, and his eyes turn white. He grabs Tom by the throat before collapsing and dying in front of him. The incident rattles Tom badly. He tries to continue his dinner with Arthur, but the fog outside keeps shifting, and Arthur's questions about Widow's Bay and its strange legends only make things worse. When the lights go out again and people try to leave the restaurant, Tom finally cracks and shouts that there is something in the fog. The lights return, but the damage is done. Arthur assumes the whole thing is some staged attempt to give Widow's Bay a spooky Salem-style atmosphere. Tom meanwhile knows something is very wrong. The episode then ends beneath the town, where we see a strange tunnel, a sinister chair that looks like something from a medieval torture chamber, and a rusty metal door. Whatever's happening in Widow's Bay, it clearly goes much deeper than a power outage and a bit of fog. Episode 2 of Widow's Bay begins with Tom still riding high from the New York Times feature. He's convinced tourists are finally coming, so when he sees the local cafe has brought a proper coffee machine, he treats it like another small victory for the town. That optimism doesn't last long though. Sirens lead Tom and Patricia to the local inn, where Wick is drunkenly warning everyone that it isn't safe for tourists to stay there. He accuses Tom of ignoring the island signs and calls him a coward, which hits a nerve. Tom snaps back and calls him a dumb hick, immediately realising he's gone too far. Later, while picking up dinner, Tom runs into the priest and asks him to lock the church door so teenagers like Evan can't keep ringing the bell at midnight. The priest is visibly unsettled and starts to say that shouldn't be possible, but stops himself. Now outside, several locals confront Tom over his insult to Wick and challenge him to spend the night at the supposedly haunted inn. Tom agrees, but they insist he has to stay that night in the captain's suite too, where a man once went mad and killed his family. Tom accepts the challenge to prove the cursed inn stories are nonsense, and Patricia drops him off, while Kurt, the owner, gives him a camera for proof before locking him inside. At first, Tom treats the whole thing like a bit of a joke. He records himself completing the locals' challenges, including spending time in a closet, though he draws the line at going down to the basement. However, strange things begin happening after that. A curtain he closed is suddenly opened, voices come from under the sink, and he meets another guest named William. Tom initially ignores him, but after the TV sparks and dies, he joins William downstairs for drinks. They talk about Widow's Bay together, Tom struggles as a mayor, and his past. Tom reveals he wasn't initially born there, but returned to care for his father, eventually meeting his wife. William reassures Tom that ghosts aren't real and that he is a good mayor. Encouraged, Tom finally enters the crawl space. His torch goes out and William appears behind him, only he's now dressed as a clown. Tom crawls deeper, sees a rotting body and winds up screaming. The next morning, Tom wakes up terrified. Kurt and the sheriff check the CCTV footage, but it turns out there is no William. Tom was alone the entire night, apparently talking to himself. Now Wick mocks him for this, saying the clown got him, while the sheriff notices black mold and blames that for the hallucinations. Tom refuses to admit Wick may be right, and when Patricia picks him up, he lies and says nothing actually happened. Episode 3 of Widow's Bay opens at the Historical Society, where tourists watch a video about Widow's Bay and its first mayor, Richard Warren. Jerry continues the tour, clearly delighted to share the town's darker history with them. Elsewhere, Tom is pleased to see more tourists arriving. He meets Marissa, who is lost after someone changes the street signs as a prank. Tom gives her a ride and tells her about the town's current events, including the inaugural swim and sunset cocktails. Marissa flirts with him and mentions that she and her friends may visit Barnabas Cavern later on. At the office, Tom is distracted by Marissa, much to Patricia's suspicion. That evening, he lies to Evan and says he's meeting colleagues, then heads out hoping to see her. However, Marissa and her friends never show up. On the drive home, Tom spots an old woman by the road. When he stops to help, she suddenly runs towards his car. Tom panics and drives off, but when he stops again, she appears behind him and scratches his hand. And Tom gets the wound treated by Dr. Morgan and calls Sheriff Bashir, believing the woman may have escaped from the mainland. Bashir dismisses him, while Dr. Morgan warns Tom not to do the inaugural swim, but Tom insists the mayor has to prove the water is safe. Now back at the office, Rosemary tells Tom the woman was a sea hag. According to legend, once she scratches someone, she can track them down. Tom ignores the warning and heads outside for a swim all the same. With the beach event already underway and no working microphone, Tom addresses the crowd anyway before swimming out to the buoy. There he sees the sea hag again. He swims back in a panic, but she scratches his leg. Tom finally goes to Wick, who explains that the sea hag tracks victims through blood and skin from her scratches. Eventually she finds them when they're too weak to move. Wick tells Tom to lock himself away for 72 hours, but Tom remains skeptical about the whole thing. That night Tom goes on a date with Marissa. It goes pretty well too, and he opens up about his late wife and Evan, though he turns Marissa down when she suggests going back to his house. Meanwhile, the priest gets lost in the forest, finds an old well, and hears something strange inside. He later runs into Evan and his friend drinking, warning them that evil is in the town, but they ignore him. At home, Wick leaves Tom a warning that the sea hag will try anything to get inside. A moment later, Marissa arrives at Tom's door, but he refuses to let her in, convinced that she may be the hag. She leaves in a taxi with her friends. Tom barricades the door and falls asleep, and the sea hag appears as his dead wife, gives him a drink, and then reveals her true form. She attacks, but Tom manages to throw her back using the recliner. He crawls into the bathtub only for her to find him again. Just before she kills him, Wick arrives and shoots the sea hag. She dissolves into sea muck, leaving Tom shaken and desperate for answers. The episode then ends with Tom receiving a voicemail from Father Bryce, who says he heard it before apologising and hanging up. The final scene cuts to Bashir calling for help over the radio, admitting he has no idea what is going on. Episode 4 of Widow's Bay begins with Sheriff Bashir calling for help from Patricia's party, where something has gone badly wrong. We then jump back 4 days. Patricia is handling donations for her mobile library when she finds a self-help book called Your Turn, Out with the Old and In with the You. Later she attends a reunion party, but everyone treats her coldly. Now one woman asks Patricia about the 4 girls killed by the serial killer in town. Patricia starts to explain that she was almost a victim too, but after leaving to clean herself up, she overhears the others accusing her of making the story up for attention. Apparently police found no record of the strange call she claimed to receive before the attack. At that night, Patricia finds the self-help book inside the mobile library and begins reading it. The book tells her how to throw a party that will make people like her and over the next few days, she becomes obsessed with using it to plan sunset cocktails. However, the event is not going well. No one RSVPs, the women from the reunion choose another party instead, and Patricia becomes increasingly desperate. Meanwhile, Bashir checks CCTV while investigating Tom's old woman sighting and notices Patricia behaving rather strangely with the book. On the night of said party, Rosemary tries to warn Patricia that she seems obsessed, but Patricia shuts her down. The event starts poorly, with only a few guests showing, until Chris and her friends arrive, followed by the Bachelorette group. Things quickly turn ugly though when Patricia overhears Chris gossiping about her. Chris calls her an attention seeker and accuses her of making the serial killer tragedy all about herself. Patricia runs into the kitchen and cries. The book tells Patricia to serve the punch, and once everyone drinks it, they suddenly adore her. The party comes alive. Bashir arrives after a noise complaint and finds Patricia in the kitchen wearing a strange crown. The room is covered in slaughtered crows, broken pots and other disturbing objects. I mean, that's one hell of a party. Patricia snaps back to herself after this and realises the party decorations and the book have changed. It turns out this was never a self-help guide, it's actually a spell book. Now outside, the party guests are in an entranced state, walking toward the sea to drown themselves. Bashir tries to stop them while Patricia grabs the book and attempts to throw it into a strange bonfire on the beach. The book sticks to her hands, so Patricia holds it into the flames instead. It burns, bubbles, and finally releases her. The guests awaken, but Chris immediately accuses Patricia of drugging them. Devastated, Patricia walks home and runs into Tom and Wick after their sea hag encounter. They head to the church to check on Father Bryce, but find his office completely trashed and a document burning. Wick puts out the fire, and then Patricia opens the door and finds Bryce's body hanging from it, making it look like he killed himself. Episode 5 of Widow's Bay opens with a man crawling through the snow, eating strange black mushrooms. At Town Hall, Tom announces a sudden curfew, despite it being fireworks night. Dale is shocked, Ruth doesn't want to work all day, and Evan is furious about being forced to stay in Tom's office. Evan brings up Father Bryce's death, but Tom says they'll talk later and warns him not to leave. Now after Bryce's memorial, Tom, Wick and Patricia search his office. Wick saves one burned document and again urges Tom to tell the town the truth, though Patricia stops another argument from breaking out. Tom notices Bryce repeatedly called one other number before he died. Patricia calls it and manages to arrange a meeting. The caller happens to be Todd, a local drug dealer from her school days. Todd identifies the mushroom and says it gives people something called true sight. One of his friends took it and was never the same again, repeatedly drawing the same handprint. Wick agrees to take the mushroom to investigate the curse, but Tom accidentally drinks the mixture instead. As Tom begins hallucinating, Wick and Patricia are forced to look after him. He can barely function, to be honest, and whenever he has a moment of clarity, he keeps asking for Evan. Unfortunately, Evan has already sneaked out to meet his friends outside the town's infamous serial killer house. They smoke weed in the car and scare each other with stories, but none of them actually go inside. Now back at Town Hall, Bashir questions Tom about the curfew, but Tom is too distracted by strange sounds only he can hear. Bashir takes Patricia away to give a statement about her party, leaving Tom alone at a chaotic town meeting where the locals are furious about the cancelled fireworks. Meanwhile, Wick takes Bryce's burned paper to Jerry, who identifies it as a page from the diary of Sarah Warren, wife of the town's founder. Within it, Sarah describes Richard Warren as violent and possibly cursed, writing that the heart of the island's curse beats inside the cylinder he wears around his neck. Now Wick tells Patricia, and she brings Tom to the Historical Society, keeping him on a hand leash so he doesn't wander off. Wick suggests they may need to exhume Richard's grave and find the necklace. Tom, however, remains fixated on Evan. Ruth tries to help watch him, but Tom causes chaos during a stop at the convenience store as the hallucinations grow worse. At dusk, Evan's friends dare him to enter the serial killer's house. He nearly opens the door too, but Bashir arrives just in time and sends them all home. When Evan returns, he lashes out at Tom, accusing him of controlling him and keeping him trapped in Widow's Bay. This triggers one of Tom's buried memories. He remembers trying to leave the island with his pregnant wife Lauren. Out on the boat, Lauren suddenly went blind and panicked, forcing them to turn back. Evan was delivered safely, but Lauren remained cursed and catatonic. Now back in the present, Tom desperately prays for Evan's safety. Exhausted and vomiting, he kneels by the toilet and hears a thick, static-filled voice. He turns towards the darkness and sees something moving inside it. Then everything goes silent. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.